Night leans across a field of metal-bright reeds. The breeze makes them sing like thin chimes. Above, a pale disk stares down without blinking. Out in the hush, an apex mother moves, striped shadow on shadow, flanked by two lean hunters that read the wind as if it were a book written for them alone. They halt at a scuffed patch of earth where tiny paw marks meander, then break. The air tastes of iron filings and boiled water. Outpost. A low thrumming ripples the mother's throat. Not rage, promise. Mine were here. The hunters answer with the kind of stillness that means yes. They run. Inside the human perimeter, lights are kind and low. A maintenance bay breathes warm air and fatigue. One human crouches at a valve manifold, knuckles blackened by honest work. A stubborn gauge refuses to climb. With a muttered compromise and a practiced twist, the needle slips into the green. The human laughs once, tired and private. From beyond the half-open cargo door, a chirrup. Not bird, not insect. Curious. The human slides the door wider. Night air enters wearing the scent of wet stone. Something small darts across the ramp and freezes. Gold eyes, petal ears. A mouthful of chaotic decisions. Another small shape bumps into the first. Two bodies. Same pattern, same unsteady bravery. Where's your mother? The human asks the night. It answers with a paw on a bootlace, a climb up a trouser leg, a soft insistence that warmth is urgently required now. The second follows like a question mark turning into a period on a heartbeat. The human goes very still, hands hovering open, as two bundles of not quite fur decide that a chest is a hill and a throat is a pillow. Tiny engines engage, purr, 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 a frequency that sands rough thoughts down to round ones. The human's breathing slows. The night hums in tune. The door remains open. Elsewhere in the outpost, a wall display sketches the world in pale lines. A leader watches the tracks of things that do not want to be tracked. A scientist with gentle hands and wild hair arrives breathless. "You need to see the bay," the scientist says. "Is it on fire?" "No, better, worse, both. Alarms are not sirens here." A harmonic note spills across the floor like water. Apex presence at the line. "Drop the deterrents to safe," the leader orders. "No sonic walls tonight." A junior watchkeeper hesitates, then obeys. Somewhere out in the reeds, the night becomes one thin layer easier to breathe. The maintenance door slides aside. The scene is so quiet it makes sound. A human slumped against a coil of thermal pad, eyes closed, a smile trying not to be noticed. One cub sprawled upside down across the sternum, hind paws splayed. The other wedged under a jaw, snout tucked near pulse. A shadow pours into the threshold and becomes a shape taller than any person in the room. The mother arrives with a silence that is not absence but competence. A translator disc, clipped to a beam nearby, wakes with a soft click. The mother's breath washes over the human's cheek. The cub under the jaw squeaks and burrows deeper. Without waking, the human's palm cups along a tiny spine, thumb finding exactly the line between shoulder blades that means stay. The temperature of the room changes by a fraction that everyone feels. The leader speaks first. Palms open, voice meant for skittish creatures and diplomats. The little ones wandered in. No steel, no claim, only warmth. The mother inhales, weighing more than scent. Smell of iron and fear, the translator decides for her. Also of milk. The scientist, unable to help themselves, whispers about stress hormones and cross-species cues and how mammals sometimes advertise safety when they most need it themselves. The look from the leader says later, "Time stretches like fabric and does not tear." The human wakes. "Hi," says the human, because sometimes the bravest word is the smallest one. The upside-down cub sneezes, scandalized by its own nose. The human snorts a laugh that everyone was holding for them. The mother lowers an arm like a branch from a remembered tree. One cub goes first, claws a ladder into familiar stripes. The second butts its forehead against the human's sternum as if to stamp receipts unnecessary and follows. The mother straightens. Both young, draped like living embroidery, and studies the soft creature who did not run. "What is your price?" The translator offers, because languages assume debts where stories don't. "No price," the human says. Some things, you just do. The hunters in the doorway set their shoulders down from knives to tools. The leader gestures toward the open emptiness just beyond the perimeter lights. A shelter, the leader says. At your boundary. Heat and a steady tone. A place for small lives to wait out cold, flood, thunder. In return, teach us your marks. Carve your warnings where our boots won't miss them. We'll keep the last 100 meters honest. No weapons, no chase, no surprises. The mother's crest flexes. Consideration, not threat. Far from here, but also here, the stone remembers other paws, other storms. The mother reaches back into a story older than her shape. In a drought story, says the machine in the mother's voice, a lion carried blind cubs. A scorpion walked beside and did not sting. When the lion stumbled, the scorpion braced with weak strength. They called each other sometimes. The scientist's mouth opens around a plea disguised as a hypothesis. We would like to listen to the cub's song, they say. At a distance, no touch. We think it might steady frightened lungs. No knives, says the machine for the mother. Only air, says the scientist. Already promising to future patients. The mother looks one last time at the human who smells like fear and milk and night without knives. You are rest stone, the machine says, making a title out of a moment. Remember it, the human does. Dawn oxidizes the world into color. A basalt rim unfurls above a shallow canyon where water threads the day with silver. The outpost arrives with bolts and bricks that store heat, with composite skin that stretches like leaf, with chalk that will be rain soon, with a speaker that will become almost heart. On a boulder above, the mother watches. The hunters flank like parentheses that can contain either a threat or a blessing. Ribs rise from rock. Skin goes over bone. Heat bricks begin their quiet work. They swallow surplus, hold it, offer it back later in lean hours. The scientist kneels a polite distance from a dozing kit and paints waves with a sensor. The waves are nested like shells listening to each other. Almost, says the machine for the mother when the speaker's first rhythm purls into the air. Too perfect, says the scientist. Delighted to be corrected. They lace the beat with tiny human stutters, healthy chaos, proof of life. The tone grows a flaw and becomes comfort. The human who held warmth tests the seat against the new wall. 6 heartbeats of sleep fall on them like a gentle prank. They wake, sheepish and pleased. Works, they say, which is the liturgy of makers. At the threshold, the hunters lay reed lace that smells like stay. No design is finished until the part that fails is found and taught to do better. A knuckled buoy of basalt is shouldered across the dirt toward the shelter mouth. It protests in the only language rocks know, mass. The leader frames the exercise neatly. Flood debris, cold storm, cubs inside. Solve it. A capstan would be an indulgence, a backhoe a sin. The human who adopted a temporary mountain finds a lever in a fallen rib of stone and a fulcrum in something sturdy and near. A hunter nudges the fulcrum half a body length with quiet authority. Now the stick bites, says everything that understands leverage. A count, a lean, a bite. The stone rolls far enough to make breath sound again. The canyon's reeds applaud like rain on tin. The mother's weight shifts to approval. Moved the cold hill with a song and a stick, says the machine, which is a compliment and a conclusion. We call this hunter clever. The other machine adds, the one inside every mammal that schedules courage for when it will be most useful. The leader speaks into a recorder and into the moment warmth corridor protocol, the leader says. No live ammo within sight of the shelter. Shared training, shared signals, shared repair. Shared blame when needed, shared credit never demanded. The scientist adds a quiet clause that sounds like a vow. Every time we use this flawed heartbeat to steady a panicked chest, they say, we will remember who taught us to listen. The mother touches a cool nose to the human's forearm in a gesture that would be a bite if the story were different. The young ones, bored with history and enchanted by pillows, pile into the shelter and locate the nearest heartbeat by instinct older than words. Neighbors, says the leader. Neighbors, says the machine for the mother. Neighbors, says the human who now carries a title. Paperwork happens. So do naps. Time passes in the useful way. Medbay. The flawed rhythm hums, and a spacer who came in with a storm inside their ribs breathes like they found a porch. The scientist sits outside the curtain and lets their eyes sting in peace. Trails. A patrol approaches sand that looks trustworthy and is not. A fresh glyph carved low, 3 lines and a spiral, saves ankles, days, lives. The junior watchkeeper photographs the mark and adds it to a field guide titled, "Please Don't Fall In." Shelter. Thunder throws silver knives across the ridge. Small bodies arrive damp and unapologetic, climb the same chest, need the same vest with bright claws that promise 1,000 future arguments with the world. A square of embroidered cloth appears on the shelter wall later, a hill with a heartbeat, blue thread singing a spiral. Kitchen corner. The not meat on the griddle earns respect. Hunters learn that beans can fight back and still be kind. Humans learn that predators can purr without losing any teeth. Arbitration tent. A chant taught before a hunt, meant to make many lungs one, walks into a human dispute and returns with no blood on it. The leader writes, "Comfort is a tool in a margin," and underlines it twice. No one calls any of this diplomacy. Everyone knows it is. Later, under a new moon that feels like a held breath, the luminous insects that the little ones love drift low over a black strip of water. Paw prints skid as curiosity outruns caution. But the mud at the water's edge is carved with signs only a few paw lengths high. A spiral arrow, another, and letters scratched with a stick by a patient adult hand, "Home this way." The prints curve uphill. The shelter's hum comes to meet them like smell meets memory. Inside, a warm panel receives a tired back. The flawed heartbeat makes room. Damp, small bodies tumble in and pin a bigger one to the floor with the moral authority of the beloved. Purring fills the corners, then the roof, then the outside. The doorway takes on a shape in the rain, a large silhouette that stands, listens, and decides there is nothing to add. Morning fit itself to the ridge. A plaque goes up above the shelter mouth, etched in 2 alphabets and in grooves that sing when water runs. Rest stone. A disc of polished basalt, strung on reed fiber, is hung around a human neck. 3 shallow dimples where a paw might sit. "If you are lost," says the machine for the mother, "press and remember the song." "I'll answer back," says the human, and means it. A hunter, normally a comedian made of knives, finds a new word and turns it over like a fruit to see which side looks like a sunrise. Between bones, they say. Not pray, not pack. The thing that keeps ribs from kissing so the lungs can fill. There is a pause where everyone in earshot sets this word gently. On a shelf inside themselves, the leader tries to trap the day in a report and fails in a flattering way. The predator's cubs went missing, the leader dictates, and were found sleeping peacefully on a human's chest. Then, quieter to the room. Humanity's edge is not always the sharper tool. Sometimes it is the warmer surface. The junior watchkeeper pretends not to hear but writes it on a sticky note anyway. A field guide grows fat with glyphs. A medbay protocol acquires an opening line, "Sing thank you to the ones who taught us this rhythm." The shelter wall collects embroidery and stories stitched in languages that never once asked permission to love something dangerous. The mother and the human walk the line where outpost becomes world. The young ones escalate into long-limb adolescence, overshoot a dozen safe distances, and are caught by good signage and bad weather and a shelter that will never ask them to apologize. There are arguments, conducted with growls and hand signals that end, with both parties sitting on the same warm floor eating food that refuses to be only fuel. There are jokes that are mostly gestures. There are silences that do more work than speeches. Sometimes, the hunters stand at the doorway in heavy rain and say nothing just to hear the flawed heartbeat speak like a friend who will always answer calls at odd hours. A final gathering at sunset stains the basalt edges with wine colors. A modest crowd because spectacle is a poor witness. The plaque gleams. The hum stitches itself through voices. The air smells like hot dust and something green remembering water. The mother looks at the sky, calculates a storm, and nods. The young ones leap, 1, 2, too much weight for a heartbeat and exactly the right amount for a life, landing draped across shoulders that were always a hill. Keep the song hot, says the machine for the mother. Always, says the human who didn't send an invoice. The leader stands with hands in pockets, watching two silhouettes blur into weather and purpose. We are loud about being clever, the leader murmurs to no one in particular. I like us best when we are warm. The scientist tucks that line into the book of phrases that save lives. Humans like to put letters on pride. On some days, the letters mean louder. On this day, they mean yes. Yes to a door left open because the night might need it. Yes to a flaw folded into a rhythm because perfection is brittle. Yes to building a thing whose best metric is the number of crises that do not happen. Yes to being a place small, beings can safely fall asleep. On the ridge above the shelter, the reeds applaud in their thin-voiced way. Far off, hunters sing the long note that says found. The hum answers, imperfect and faithful. The stones remember because that is their only job, and they are very good at it.